The chapel was silent, save for the murmur of the rain against the stained glass windows. I stood near the back, alone among a sea of black-clad mourners, watching the coffin of Margarita Thorne slowly being wheeled down the aisle. My hand stayed folded, not in reverence, but in restraint. Grief clung to the air, thick and curated. People sobbed, but it felt rehearsed. I looked at them, the socialites, the board members, the extended cousins, and realized I didn't belong to this display of mourning. Not really. Then the projector hummed to life. Images flashed across the wall. Childhood Christmases, summer getaways to the Hamptons, the Italy trip in '09. I leaned in. Every photo had the family smiling, Roland, Bianca, even Margarita in her younger years. But I wasn't in any of them. At first, I told myself it was an oversight, a mistake. Then came the final image, our trip to St. Bart's. I remembered standing next to Roland on the beach. But there in the photo, it was Bianca photoshopped in my place. Not erased by accident, erased on purpose. I glanced across the pews. Roland's eyes met mine, then flicked away like I was a stranger. Margarita's sister gave me a small, pitying nod, but turned back to the slideshow. No one said a word, not even Cashenwolf, who stood at the far edge of the crowd, unreadable and unnoticed by most. And just like that, I realized they never saw me as family, only as an obligation. After the service, the reception began inside the Thorne Estate's grand dining room. It smelled of wine, lilies, and carefully disguised betrayal. I waited for silence before speaking. Why wasn't I in any of the pictures? My voice was low, but it cut through the clinking glasses like glass shards. Catherine sipped her champagne and gave a tight-lipped smile. Maybe because you never truly belonged. I looked at Roland. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Silent as always. A man in a suit stepped forward to read the will. My name was mentioned only once. I was left nothing but a small, locked wooden box. That was it. Robert stood, arms crossed. You were taken in out of Margaret's guilt. Not out of love, he said, his voice flat. She felt bad for your birth mother. That doesn't mean you were ever ours. Laughter rang from Bianca like a blade drawn across skin. I grabbed the nearest glass and hurled it to the floor. The crash silenced the room. No one rushed to stop me. Instead, they looked satisfied, like they had been waiting for me to fall apart. It gave them their excuse. You need to leave, Catherine said coldly. Now. The rain was unforgiving as I stood in the circular driveway with my suitcase. Water seeped into my shoes. My dress clung to me like a second skin. Bianca opened the door one last time, not to say goodbye, but to toss my coat at me. The door slammed shut, final and cruel. I knelt by my suitcase and retrieved the box. Inside was a letter, wrapped in aged ribbon. I opened it slowly, the ink slightly smudged. It was from Margarita. She wrote of regret, how she had tried to fight Robert years ago when he attempted to reverse my adoption, how she'd kept me in the house under threat of losing everything. She apologized, not for not loving me, but for not protecting me better. Beneath the letter was a small savings book in my birth mother's name, untouched, hidden for years. A shadow moved beside me. Reverend Hale stood there, holding an umbrella out toward me. He didn't say a word. I looked up at him and shook my head. I'm fine. I wasn't, but I would be. I straightened my shoulders, left the umbrella behind, and walked barefoot into the storm. They didn't see me break, and that was their mistake. The city never slept, but that night Manhattan felt quieter than usual. Daniel's condo sat high above the bustle, shielded by glass walls and dim lighting. I was on the edge of his sofa, my legs curled under me, holding a cup of tea I didn't remember making. "I needed to see you," I said, voice nearly breaking. I didn't know where else to go. Daniel sat across from me, elbows on his knees, brows drawn tight. There was something unreadable in his eyes. Not sympathy, not warmth. Confusion, maybe. "I saw something," he finally said, reaching for his phone. "Online. It's been spreading." He turned the screen to face me. There it was, a photo of me in a cafe, leaning close to a man, Professor Anders. The angle suggested something intimate, but it was cropped, context stripped away. We'd been talking about research funding, nothing more. My breath caught. "Bianca posted it," I asked, already knowing the answer. He nodded. "And others. She's hinting you too had something going on for months." "That's not true," I said firmly, placing the cup down. "You know it's not." "I thought I knew," Daniel replied, standing up. "But I don't know what to think anymore. It's a lot." I moved toward him. "Daniel, please, don't let them do this to us." "I need some air," he said quietly. "I need time." And just like that, he was gone. The door clicked shut. I stared at it for what felt like hours, waiting for him to return, to realize the lie and come back. But he didn't. Later that night, I sank to the floor of his hallway, knees pulled to my chest, choking on a silence that was heavier than any scream. 2 days later, I was at a motel a block from Penn Station, the kind of place where no one asked questions and the wallpaper peeled like old regrets. I hadn't eaten. My phone buzzed Laurel. I didn't pick up. I stared at a note I had written and rewritten. The words blurred. My hand trembled. I walked to the train station instead, not knowing where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. The wind outside Penn Station stung. I fumbled through my bag, and my ID slipped from my fingers. "Miss." I turned. A tall man in a navy coat held my ID. Sharp eyes. Controlled voice. "I know this name," he said. "You're Elira Madsen. Margaret Thorne's daughter." I blinked. "You knew her." "I owe her," he said simply. "Ellis March. Attorney." Within an hour, I was sitting across from him in a corner booth of a half-empty diner. He bought me coffee and didn't ask anything I wasn't ready to answer. "She kept files," he said. "Your mother was preparing something before she passed. Legal protections. A revision to the will. It was stopped by Robert Thorne." "I have nothing left," I whispered. "Not true," he replied. "You have your name. You have a brain. And now you have me." Ellis offered me a room, a small studio above his firm's Albany office, a quiet space to heal. I moved in the next day. 8 months passed, each one better than the last, though still carved with the ache of everything I'd lost. Ellis connected me to Reverend Hale again, and more surprisingly to Cashin Wolf, quietly, indirectly, through his nonprofit wing. I kept my head down, worked nights reviewing legal drafts, days volunteering for shelters and pro bono work. The city was quieter here. No skyscrapers. No whispers of the Thorne name. One afternoon, Ellis handed me a plain envelope. Gold embossed lettering. My breath hitched. It wasn't addressed to Elira Madsen. It read, "To the Director of Legal Affairs, NW Foundation. You are cordially invited to the annual Thorne Estate Gala." I read the name again and smiled. It was time. The Thorne Estate shimmered under 1,000 lights, its marble halls echoing with polite laughter and polished ambition. I stepped out of the town car with Laurel beside me, her arm looped through mine, not for balance, but solidarity. She adjusted the neckline of my midnight blue gown, her eyes flicking toward the crowd. "You ready?" she whispered. "No," I said, smiling, "but I'm here anyway." We walked through the entrance, unannounced. No fanfare, no cameras, just footsteps on polished floors and eyes that passed over me without pause. At the side table, Bianca turned. Her manicured hand extended a tray toward me, already holding glasses of champagne. "Since you're here," she said, syrupy, "might as well make yourself useful." I took it without blinking. Laurel's sharp breath echoed beside me. Across the ballroom, Cashin Wolf watched silently, his eyes unreadable, arms crossed. He made no move to intervene. That was never his style. Reverend Hale brushed past, leaning in to murmur, "They don't recognize resurrection, child. Not until you're standing in their light." I nodded, adjusting the tray, weaving through the crowd as if I belonged to it, and in a way I did, but not how they remembered. Margarita stood near the stage, addressing the elite with a voice practiced in sympathy. "Family is legacy," she declared. "Blood, tradition, and continuity." Her words floated like perfume, expensive, sweet, and artificial. I waited behind the curtain, hands folded, listening. Murmurs rippled. The president's arrival was delayed. A pause in the program. Ellis stepped to the microphone. "We have a surprise speaker this evening," he announced. "On behalf of the MW Foundation." I walked onto the stage. The room turned to ice. Bianca's glass slipped from her hand, shattering at her feet. Margarita's smile froze, eyes narrowing. I didn't flinch. "I won't take much of your time," I began, my voice steady. "Just a story. No names, no direct accusations, just truth dressed in memory. Once there was a girl in a photograph, or so she thought, but when the slideshow played, she wasn't there. Not once. Not in birthdays, not in holidays, not even in grief. Her image had been replaced, erased, pixel by pixel, memory by memory. Gasps, whispers. She was told she was family, loved, safe, but family doesn't forget you. Love doesn't erase you. I looked out over the crowd. I saw confusion, guilt, discomfort. She learned that silence can be louder than screams, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. I stepped back. A beat of silence, then applause, tentative, then rising, real. Some guests walked out. Others stood. Ellis smiled. Laurel wept. Outside, the air shifted. The distant chop of helicopter blades cut through the applause. Heads turned. A motorcade pulled in. Security swarmed. A helicopter descended onto the far lawn. Cashin Wolf stepped out in a black tailored suit. At his side, President Grace Holloway. Margarita rushed forward, arms extended. Neither of them stopped for her. Instead, they walked directly to me. The president took my hand. "She's the reason this initiative exists," she said into the microphone. "The future of equitable legal access." Cashin opened a folder. "This is a lifetime contract," he said. "You'll run the program, or we don't do it." Gasps rippled again. Cameras flashed. At that exact moment, the projector screen behind us flickered. A live feed from a whistleblower blog displayed Bianca's emails. Threats, bribes, manipulation. Security moved in. Margarita was pulled aside, then escorted toward the exit as murmurs exploded into uproar. Cashin leaned in. No need for revenge. You've already won. I looked up, bathed in the golden light of the chandeliers. They had tried to bury me, but I wasn't soil. I was seed, and I had grown. And as the cameras flashed, I knew this wasn't an ending. It was the start of something far more powerful.